Yeah, so welcome to internet censorships around Europe since ACTA. Today we're going to look at ACTA-like measures that were introduced in many European countries ever since the trade agreement was rejected in 2012. My name is Kirsten, he's Joe. We're both working for European Digital Rights, EDRI. Which is an umbrella organization for 33 civil rights groups from all across Europe. And our members are, for example, Bits of Freedom in the Netherlands, Open Rights Group in the UK, and in Germany we have many members, among them Digital Courage, Digitale Gesellschaft, and also the CCC, the Chaos Computer Club. Yeah, so we're based in Brussels, where we're advocating for digital rights. And yeah, so we're working on many topics from net neutrality to data protection and copyright. But today we're going to talk about a growing trend that's almost as difficult to get rid of as massive surveillance.
So I don't know how many of you were involved in digital rights issues back in 2012, or if you were living under a rock at the time and didn't hear about ACTA. There was a whole range of negative measures for increased copyright and increased copyright enforcement in the proposed agreement. One of the ones that was of most concern to us at the time was in Article 27 of the agreement, which stated that every party shall endeavour to promote cooperative efforts within the business community to effectively address trademark and copyright or related rights infringement. This was going to be done protecting the fundamental principles of privacy and freedom of communication. Small problem, there is no such thing in law as a fundamental principle of these things. But thankfully the community from around Europe got very active, went onto the streets, and in the run-up to the elections that happened last year, which were slowly coming onto the horizon, we and you persuaded the European Parliament to reject the agreement, and the result was an overwhelming victory for us in stopping this particular proposal. But the question is, did we really win? The answer is yes, but the question is, did the people that wanted this privatized law enforcement stop? And the answer is no. So the fair process provisions in ACTA actually originated in the OECD, which continued to push this approach after the ACTA defeat. The Council of Europe, most surprisingly, is currently working on a net neutrality recommendation, which is actually an anti-net neutrality regulation, which includes a provision on so-called self-regulatory enforcement by internet intermediaries. And the European Commission will launch in the autumn a set of stakeholder dialogues with a view to implementing copyright through voluntary measures. The problem ultimately that we're faced with is that our political leaders believe in fairies, unicorns, and rainbows. Because internet companies are magic. They're amazing. You see, all you have to do to fix all of the world's problems is to put pressure on internet companies. And when you do this, they are going to find exactly the right strategy for dealing with public policy problems. this strategy is going to be so perfect that it's going to work tomorrow, it's going to work next month, it's going to work next year, and it's going to work in 5 years, because the unicorn companies can do this amazing thing. And the strangest thing is, not alone can they find these durable solutions according to our political leaders, but the same solutions can be used to solve completely different problems. They will find solutions that work for dealing with terrorism, for dealing with child abuse, for dealing with copyright enforcement, all at the same time, because that's how great they are. Not only that, but these private companies that compete with each other are going to come up with strategies that are good for us and not good for them. They're not going to come up with enforcement strategies that are going to give them anti-competitive benefits, competitive benefits for their own business, because that's how good they are. They're going to come up with solutions that respect our fundamental rights, our privacy, our freedom of communication. They're going to give us a fair trial, and everything's going to be fine. So it's no wonder our political leaders enjoy promoting this policy so energetically. So So
actually what happened since 2012 was that many governments seem to think that these cooperative efforts, or in other words, voluntary measures by companies, are the magic solutions for all sorts of problems. So in France, so let's do a quick tour of Europe, and then we will head to our final destination in Brussels. So in Italy and France, measures are on the verge of legality. The Italian government started to censor first the net in order to block access to gambling websites, and then it started blocking access to websites in order to be seen as doing something against child pornography. And now the Italian telecommunications regulator basically decides on an ad hoc basis what is being blocked or not. In France, internet censorship includes a three-strikes system, so users can have their internet access suspended for alleged copyright infringements. But yeah, the country also filters alleged child pornography and websites that are suspected to promote terrorism, racial violence, or hatred.
In Ireland, for the last few years, there is a voluntary three-strikes system that has been in place, put in place by the Irish former monopoly Eircom. And the Irish High Court recently ruled that other internet providers should also introduce three strikes because the terms of service of the internet companies say we can disconnect you if we feel like it. So the court said, well, we are going to order you to feel like it. So now there is a law-based three-strike system, even though there isn't a law in place to require three strikes. If anyone likes to learn about really, really incompetent judges, then I warmly recommend the rulings of the Irish High Court surrounding three strikes. They really are hair-raisingly bad. In the UK's got an interesting approach. The government doesn't like itself. It doesn't consider itself competent. So when issues are of major social significance, like protecting children online, they don't believe that they are competent enough to pass a law that makes sense. So they have a voluntary blocking system for child abuse material because they believe that private companies are holy and perfect. They have this blocking system without any review process, without any process to check if it's useful or relevant or counterproductive or anything of the kind. When it comes to less serious things, the government does trust itself and is prepared to pass laws. And when they get into the area of really trivial issues, like dealing with content that's not actually illegal and not actually accused of being illegal, they're also able to persuade internet providers to block content. So in addition to the voluntary blocking of child abuse websites, the mandatory blocking of copyright infringing websites, you also have default blocking of content that might possibly be harmful to somebody. This ridiculous system has led to approximately 11% of the top 100,000 websites on Alexa being blocked by at least one internet provider in the UK, and up to 20% according to the stricter versions of those blocking filters. Amusingly, but it doesn't seem to matter, one of the websites that was blocked was the Guido Fawkes website, which is a blog which is dedicated to supporting the party that is in power in the United Kingdom at the minute. Even that didn't help persuade the government that what they're doing is stupid.
Yeah, so that was our little tour of Europe. So let's have a look what the EU in Brussels is doing right now. Yesterday, the EU Commission, or more specifically DG Connect, the service led by Günther H. Oettinger, published its digital single market strategy. I think the hashtag on Twitter is DSM. And this paper announced the review of the responsibilities of online companies for taking actions against alleged illegal content on the internet. Firstly, it wants to analyze how ISPs take down or can take down material. And secondly, it wants to introduce new repressive copyright measures. But let's do a short legal detour first.
So in 2000, the European Union, or European Community at the time, I think, adopted the E-Commerce Directive, which is broadly modeled on US legislation, but has horizontal effect, which means that it covers all types of illegal activity. It ensures that internet providers should not be made liable for content or activities of which they are not aware. We run into some difficulties in understanding in European courts what aware actually means. But we start from a position that internet providers are protected from liability, and because they're protected, they can do their jobs, and they're not incentivized to block or delete content. Recently, last year, you will have seen the European Court adopt its ruling on the Google Spain case. However, a month before, there was a more interesting case in many ways in Austria, the Kino.to case. And the European Court made a very interesting ruling. It's said that it is possible under European law to place a non-specific injunction on an internet access provider to take action against a specific online resource. What this means in practice is that the Austrian court is allowed to say to UPC, the defendant in the case, that it needs to take reasonable measures to limit access to Kino.to. And it is going to, in the world of unicorns and happy things, is going to find the perfect balance that respects everybody's rights, because there are, or there should be, rules in place in order to ensure that internet companies also respect the fundamental rights of the citizens. And in this way, they're being squeezed from both sides and find a happy medium running through the middle. If only things were that simple.
I'm going to skip the next 3 slides, even though they are funny, but I think we're running slightly out of time otherwise. Yeah, let's go back to the Commission's digital single market strategy. So in the strategy, instead of providing these safeguards that the European Court of Justice requested, the Commission now simply rebrands the ACTA approach, so we can expect a more repressive copyright enforcement and the introduction of an approach that's called follow the money. So rights holders have basically been lobbying for this measure for several years now, and I think they've been doing so in Germany at least since 2011 in so-called industry dialogues. And the idea is basically that rights holders can send letters or notifications directly to financial service providers or advertisers to request that a revenue stream is being cut off to a certain website. And on the European level, this is now likely to be included in the digital single market strategy and also in the upcoming copyright reform. And so even Google opposed SOPA PIPA in 2012 in the US, which also included this follow the money approach. The European policy team is now fully behind this thing. So the company apparently does not think that laws or court orders are necessary. Instead, it promotes the idea that companies should do more in order to go after alleged copyright infringements. Yeah, and some Swedish VPN providers could find out in 2013 what this means in practice. So in this example here, the provider had no longer access to his or her Visa and MasterCard services. And now if we check again the ACTA text, you can see that these coalitions mentioned by Google here are pretty close to the cooperative measures.
Similarly, in the digital single market drafts, we had, for instance, follow the money approaches, which have been put in place. Now, the amount of lobbying that's happening in Brussels and in the European Parliament in particular is such that there is no single concept of what follow the money is. And yet, the Culture Committee of the European Parliament adopted a text offering its full support for the follow the money approach. The European Parliament now, or the European Parliament's Culture Committee at any rate, now supports an enforcement measure which does not actually exist in any form on a European level. So they really think it's a good thing. So the follow the money approach again falls into the concept of cooperative measures within the business community. The other thing to remember on follow the money is that the US payment providers have a deal with the White House to cut off on a global level organizations accused of infringing IPR. The White House also has an arrangement with the advertising networks to cut off services globally on the basis of accusations of infringing IPR. So essentially what Europe is doing is watching the US and the US companies enforcing copyright on a global level and going, we think it's a good idea too. When in fact it's actually got no control over it anyway and isn't prepared to enforce or enforce citizens' rights in Europe or ask for it to be enforced. Similarly, the digital single market looks to require internet intermediaries to exercise greater responsibility. Greater than what? We don't know. And due diligence, what that means we don't know. In the way they manage their networks and systems. A duty of care, the meaning of which we don't know. We know that it is privatized law enforcement, but we don't know exactly what it means. What we do know is that it is exactly in line with the concept that there should be cooperation among the business community to enforce copyright. And we also know that it is in obvious and clear contradiction to Article 52 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which says that restrictions on freedom of communication must be provided for by law.
Yes, so the European Commission is planning to put these measures that we've just been talking about into the copyright reform, which is being launched in autumn 2015, so of this year, and also the analysis of the role of ISPs in combating illegal content on the internet is starting this year. So this means that basically the fight starts now, and Germany is key. Germany is key because this person here, oh, no, sorry, I meant, of course, this commissioner here is responsible for the digital economy and society. And yeah, so this is a bit worrying because since his taking of office, Günther Oettinger has compared the proponents of net neutrality to the Taliban. He has said that he wanted a new launch of a new data retention directive, even though it doesn't fall at all under his competency. So yeah, we are stuck with this now. And the other reason why Germany is key is because this parliamentarian here, Evelyn Gebhardt, is in charge of the dossier in the European Parliament.
So, we won before, and we can win again. You can help us win by following the news on edri.org, by, of course, following us on Twitter, and shame on anybody who in this room who's not already following us on Twitter. You can blog, tweet, post, rehash, translate what we're doing, share the information in your networks. Let your parliamentarians know what you think of the idea of rainbows, apple pie, and those wonderful internet companies regulating your freedom of communication on the internet. And, of course, if you can't do any of that, we are prepared to accept donations. You heard me right. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, if you want access to the Günther Oettinger pic, we're going to tweet our slides later.
I would like to understand a bit better the behavior, let's say, of the people in the Commission and the Parliament. I mean, if I'm nasty, I would say it sounds like they have been paid off. If I'm less nasty, it sounds like they don't know what they're talking about. So could you please explain a bit how it comes to be such chaos?
I wouldn't like to accuse anybody of corruption. I'm more happy to accuse people of incompetence. A lot of the international discussions, as we saw in ACTA and as we see in the OECD, are being driven by the United States. And from the United States perspective, all of this is strategically and politically sensible. If the major international payment providers are American, and the search engines are American, and the advertising networks are American, it's quite a nice idea to have them implementing American law on a global basis. It's quite nice that YouTube is imposing the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in Europe and elsewhere in the world. It's also quite useful domestically, because the US can't pass laws that restrict freedom of communication because their First Amendment rights prevent this from happening. So if you're a US politician and if you want to push tough copyright legislation and enforcement, then domestically it makes sense and internationally it makes sense. And the US is very, very good at communicating its message. And the US companies are very good at communicating their message.
Yeah, and we also come back to this problem here. I mean, EDRI is still the only Europe-wide organization based in Brussels, and we're trying to talk to a lot of parliamentarians, but we're only 6 people. The industry lobbyists have approximately 30,000 people in Brussels. So, of course, they have more time and resources to go and speak to everybody, convince them of, yeah.
But the shorter version is that for want of something better to do, there's an episode of The Simpsons. All human wisdom resides in The Simpsons somewhere. There's an episode of The Simpsons where where Homer Simpson becomes responsible for rubbish disposal in Springfield, and his slogan is, "Why can't someone else do it?" And if it's good enough for Homer Simpson, then damn it, it's good enough for Günther Oettinger.
First, thanks for the great work you do, and also as somebody who does activism, I want to stress that without EDRI, I would not even know how we could win any battle on a European scale. So I want to stress how important the work is you do. And I also have a question. I heard there is this new possibility to become an EDRI supporter. Maybe you could tell us more about that.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, so this is a thing that we launched just this week. If you go on edri.org/supporter, you can choose to contribute to our work on a regular basis and become an official supporter.
I have a question, actually. How is it that you only have 6 people working on such a big issue? Or, you know, I mean... But I mean, can't you? Are you trying? Or like, why isn't recruitment working? Or what is the situation?
As Kirsten amply demonstrates, we do our absolute level best to give ourselves as much resources as possible, and so far that level best has allowed us to grow to the size we're at. 6 years ago, there wasn't even an EDRI office in Brussels. 6 years ago, in 2009, there was no digital rights-focused NGO working in Brussels. We had the European Consumers Bureau devoting some of their time, and that was it. So we've come a long way in 6 years, but our growth curve is unfortunately smaller than the growth curve of the work that the Commission is throwing at us.
Okay, so if you have any more questions, they'll be around, and a few more minutes we need, and then we get to the next talk. Thank you.